Value the deal with financing part 2. And here's where we left off. We created a new assumptions area with the loan assumptions. Now we need to incorporate this into our discounted cash flow. Here's our discounted cash flow for an all-cash deal. What I want to do is copy year 1, year 2, and year 3 because as I'm doing work down here, I really can't see what year I'm working on. So I'm just going to add it in underneath these headings. As you can see, they match with what you see above it. So let's start valuing this deal with financing. Right here, we want to put the cash flow from an all-cash deal. That's the money we know the investment's going to produce. And as you can see, I'm copying that formula across and turning this into dollar signs. And removing decimal places. From this cash flow generated at the property, we want to subtract out our loan payments. And we're going to have loan payments for years 1, year 2, and year 3, and they're going to be the exact same number. When you're looking at loan payments, the amount you pay each month stays the same over the entire life of the loan. So you're not going to see any changes in the loan payment amount. That is, unless you have something unique about the loan you're working with. Maybe the rate changes at some point down the road. That's beyond the scope of this video. So I'm going to write equals loan payments, and I'm going to do the same thing for year 2 and the same thing for year 3. Next, let's subtract out our loan payoff amount in year 3. And that is only going to go in year 3. As you can see, loan payments and loan payoff are negative, and the cash flow from the all-cash deal is positive. So the cash produced by the investment minus loan payments minus loan payoff. And that about does it for our future cash flows. But when we're dealing with a loan, we now have to take into account the now. What happens on the settlement date when you buy it? We're going to start looking at how much money you're going to put into the deal, how much of that's going to be taken care of by the loan amount, and you're going to take into account your loan costs. So let's do that right here. So I'm going to create a new year. I'm going to call it year 0. Just consider year 0 the settlement date. When you actually close on the property and money changes hands, and the deed changes hands. You're going to have a purchase price. And we're going to record that here in year 0. And we're going to type equals negative because it's a cash outflow. You have to buy it, so money has to come out of your pocket. And we're going to choose the purchase price we came up with for an all-cash deal. And I don't like the formatting of that. That's red. None of the stuff we've been working with has been red. So I'm just going to highlight a few of these cells and change them to this formatting. Get rid of the decimal places. And now everything's consistent. The next thing we need to take into account is the loan amount. So let's type loan amount. And for loan amount, this is going to be a positive number because this is money that's coming into the deal from a bank. And there's the loan amount. And then we have loan costs. And that's going to be a negative amount because that's a cost. As you look at these, this is cash flow from you as the investor's perspective. And then we can actually do a new cash flow line here. And let's add all this stuff above it together. We can drag that formula across. And let's put a line on top to separate this total line. And there you have it. So what we're looking at down here is the money you as the investor need to come up with, which is the $53,000, and the cash flow you're going to pull out of this investment over the next 3 years. This is all the money that's allocated to you, the investor. So if you're buying the property all cash, you'd pay $161,000, and you would get back these cash flows in the future. And that would get you a 7.15% return. Down here, we don't have the return, but we're given how much money we have to come out of pocket and how much money we're going to receive down the road. So here's how you calculate the return when you're given a purchase price. Or I guess you wouldn't call it a purchase price here. You would call it an investment amount because the purchase price is actually much more, $161,000. As you can see up here and right down here. So we're changing our language a little bit to say the amount we're going to invest versus how much we're going to pay for the property. So we're looking at how much we're investing and how much we're getting as an investor. So down here, I'm going to write down return with financing. And we're going to use a formula right here. It's called IRR formula. And what it does is it takes how much we're putting into the deal along with how much we'll be pulling out of the deal in the future. And it tells us what return this is per year. It does everything we did when we valued the property all cash with the dollar growth over the next 3 years, and then we did all the division and all that kind of stuff. You come out with the same return, but we're going about it the more normal way. We are investing $53,000 and we're going to get this. So what's my return if I invest $53,000 to get these future cash flows? Equals IRR, open parenthesis, and highlight all that stuff. And you get a 10% return. Now, when you're dealing with return, you want to look at decimal places. So I'm going to make 2 decimal places there. So it's a 10.08% return. So when you're looking at this, you can see that with financing, we're getting a 10% return approximately. But if we bought the thing all cash, we'd only have a 7.15% return. Interesting, right? So let's raise this number back up to 10%. If we buy the property for a lower price of $150,000, we're going to get a 17.5% return. You mess around with the return up here on the unleveraged portion or all cash version, and you just keep decreasing that to a low number until this is 10% if you're looking for a 10% overall return. So I'm going to lower this to 7.8. It's literally a manual process, but you literally just keep plugging new stuff in. There we go. I played with it enough. Got to 7.15. Got me 10.08% return leveraged, even though it's 7.15% unleveraged. And as you noticed, the loan amount changed dynamically. The loan payments changed dynamically. The loan payoff amount in the end changed dynamically. And we were able to come up with a more accurate representation of what our return is on a leveraged basis. I want to cover a few additional things with you before we move on. You can increase the amount of money you can pay for the property and still get the exact same return on your money. So coming up here, well, the first thing I want to do right now actually is create a little dashboard, right? So what I want to do is highlight these 2 things. What I'm going to do is drag them down here. You can do this in Excel, and it won't mess up any of your formulas. Everything will still work exactly the same. I just dragged these formulas and stuff all around. So I have return with financing right here. I have return all cash right here, and I have max purchase price right here. So what I want to do is change my return all cash to 10%. We can pay $149,000, but our return with financing, the amount we actually invest, which is $49,000, and we get all these future cash flows, we get a 17% return on our money. So if we want to get a 10% return on our investment and take out financing with these great interest rate terms, I'd say 4% is a great rate if you can get it. Let's decrease this to 7.15% on a leverage basis, and that takes us back to 10% with the leverage. And that increased our purchase price from $149,000 to $161,000 now. So with the money we're investing, even though we're investing less, we're investing $53,000, not $150,000. But on the lesser investment that we're putting in, we're getting the same 10% return out of it. And that's how you increase the purchase price and get the same return as you would on an all-cash deal and ultimately pay more for the property. Now, not every loan's going to allow you to do that, but you can do the math here and figure it out. The next thing I want to show you is how if you are a strong investor with really good credit and can get really good loan terms, how you can pay more than somebody who gets worse terms and still get the exact same return they get. So let's say you are an incredible borrower and you get 4%. You can pay $161,000 and get a 10% return with financing. But let's say that your credit's not that great and you can only get a 6.5% interest rate on your loan. That really increases your loan payments and really cuts back on your return. You see that we have the same $161,000 where the borrower with good credit was getting a 10% return. You're getting a 5% return on that same dollar amount. So in order for you to get a 10% return with that higher interest rate, we have to increase our return from an all cash deal until we get to the 10% range. And that's close enough. So a great borrower who can get a 4% interest rate can pay $161,000 and get a 10% return. A not so great borrower who can only get a 6.5% interest rate can only pay $154,000 to get the same 10% return. So credit worthiness and the low interest rate on the loan you can get have an impact on the amount of money you can pay for something. So having good credit can help you actually pay more and get the same return. And lastly, I want to go into a little more detail about IRR. We used that when we did this return with financing, right? We said IRR, and then we highlighted all the cash flows from now, when we close on the deal, all the way through when we sell the property and get our money back. IRR stands for internal rate of return. And you've been using internal rate of return this entire time. I just haven't been calling it that. The definition of IRR kind of sucks. It goes along the lines of something like, it's the discount rate at which the cash inflows and the cash outflows over a period of time equals zero. It's weird, right? It doesn't sound right. But if you understand return as we're discussing it here, you invest $1 today and you pull $1 whatever out in year one, and you pull $1 whatever out in year two, and you pull even a bigger $1 whatever out in year three, and that gets you a certain return. You understand the concept of IRR. Just call it return and you're good to go. But if someone talks about IRR, you intuitively know what that means. Just ignore that definition I gave you. And then the last thing we're going to look at is debt service coverage ratio. And if you recall from the theory video, that's net operating income divided by the loan payments. I'm going to decrease the number of spaces here so that we can look at more of our model here together. So here's our net operating income. We need these numbers. And here's our loan payments. Or we could just use these down here. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use these down here. I'm going to write a little note right here, DSCR. And then here I'm going to write equals negative net operating income divided by loan payments. I used the negative because I want a positive number and we're dividing by a negative number. I'm going to change this to a simple number, which is 1.27. And then I'm going to drag this formula across so you can see the debt service coverage ratio. And let's put a little border around this to keep it separate from everything else. So our debt service coverage ratio in year one is 1.27. That may or may not be okay with our lender. It's up to them. They might have a debt service coverage ratio of 1.4, which means we can't take out the loan that you see here. We might need to lower our LTV until this is 1.4 or 1.3 or whatever our bank requires. And then you can see it changes in year two and year three, and that's simply because the net operating income goes up every year a little bit. And at the same time, our loan payments stay the same every year. So increasing NOI and stagnant loan payments, you're going to see some changes in what the debt service coverage ratio is. So let's go back to here and type in 4%. When you look at the interest rates I use here, don't get mad if that's not what the case is in your market at that particular time. The interest rate doesn't matter. It's the math we're doing that matters. So please don't get mad at me because I'm using 4% and you don't see 4% anymore. We're literally just doing the math here. So put in whatever interest rate applies to you here. When we made that change, you'll see our debt service coverage ratio jumped pretty significantly from the 1.2s to 1.5. 1.5, you're probably going to be good there. But we can increase the purchase price, remember, because we only want a 10% return on our money, and right now it's 14. So let's lower this to what we know it's supposed to be, which is 7.15. And our debt service coverage ratio is 1.49, 1.53, and 1.57 in year three. If that's okay with our bank, we should be pretty good here. But again, talk to your bank. And in a future video, we're going to come back to this little dashboard we started creating here and start adding some more things to it, like cap rate, price per unit, cash on cash return, etc. Great job. This was a lot of work right here. Learning how to do discounted cash flow analysis in Excel takes some getting used to. You're going to have to practice a couple times. I don't expect you right after watching this one video to go out and be able to do this. What I want you to do is literally go through this video, do everything I did here, copy me, then try to do it on your own as much as you can, looking back at this for reference. And then I want you to go and do a real deal from your market. Go get some property information from a broker or get the information from a property you already own. Refer back to this video on how to calculate certain things and do this. Doing it is how you're going to learn it. It's going to take a little bit more time to get than using a simple formula like you saw in those beginner real estate books. I'm trying to take you from being a beginner to thinking more like a pro. And the beginner books and the beginner courses are not going to show you this stuff because you as a person have to start thinking and acting like a pro investor. You can't sell as many beginner books if you really teach someone how to do something. But great job. You stuck with me, and we have a few videos left to help round out your knowledge here. Stay tuned.